All right, everyone, here we are for our next Race and Social Equity Academy webinar offering. Folks are gonna be coming in, so y'all come in, get yourself situated. FYI, just so you know, panelists will only have their mics and cameras on. So those of you, wherever you might be, if you are at home, if you are on the go, wherever you want to be, feel free to be there, right? If only because we want to make sure that this is a focus on educational and the information that is going to be provided from our panelists as well, right? So feel free to get comfortable, get your headphones in, whatever it is. At the end of the webinar, or towards the end rather, there will be a chance to ask questions, but feel free, if you have the Q&A box available to you, go ahead and put information in there as you feel the need to be able to start to ask those questions, or at least have them available, right? So depending on the conversation we have, it's going to be a great one. We'll get to as many questions as possible there, right? So I'll give it another minute or so, and then we will start to get things going. Oh, I actually have a hand raised. Let's see. For the moment, I'll allow this. Helly, I believe you have your hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and give you the moment. Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi. I just want to double check. So then since the panelists are going to be speaking, then we won't have our what is it called? Our cameras on, correct?
Correct, yes.
Oh, just want to double check.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
We can feel free to ask questions during, or is it best we save the questions toward the end?
Either or, we'll be checking through. So depending on time, we'll get to what we can get to, but you're more than welcome. It won't disrupt the panelists as far as asking or putting questions in the Q&A box.
Okay, sure thing. In the chat box, the same thing, right?
You should have just the Q&A box.
That different than the chat box?
Yes, the Q&A box is
anonymous,
so it does not show.
I see it.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. All right. Here we are. We're going to go ahead and jump in, and I will start a brief share for you all. Here you are for today's Race and Social Equity Academy. Come on, let's pull it up. There we go. Health, Safety, and Wellbeing webinar focused on women's health, safety, and well-being. My name is Matthew Mills. I am the director of the Race and Social Equity Academy in the School of Social Work and the College of Health and Human Services at UNC Charlotte. This is the second of a webinar series that we've been working on for the school year to be able to support community members, practitioners, educators, folks who want to be involved in conversations, folks that are involved in the work, to be able to better learn, to be able to better engage and work together to support different population groups and how we can better support them as well, right? So we're looking at the engagement of trying to understand the problems, trying to better understand the needs as well. This series is also a part of, meets the expectations that the CSWE, the Council for Social Work Education, has for curricular activities. So this is an engagement that's intended to help support students and other individuals better understand different social work values as well. We do know and do not expect social workers to be the only individuals that are a part of this conversation, but as you are learning more and you're probably hearing more about some of these conversations, you will see and get a good social justice, social work vibe as well. For your learning objectives, these will be just the concepts that you are intended to better understand or be able to better understand by the end of this webinar. Increasing access or increasing awareness of women's health, safety, and well-being needs, encouraging allyship and inclusive behavior, promoting access to health and community resources, and to understand how to ethically work with a diverse population of women, right? Myself, I will be actually taking a back seat in this conversation to the panelists that we have here, who are the experts and the individuals who are far better able to have this conversation and engage with you all. So we're going to take a few minutes here to let the panelists introduce themselves before we get into the webinar and the information that we're going to cover today. We'll start with Diamond Staton-Willams. Please share with us some information about yourself.
Yep. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Well, morning. I'm Diamond Staton-Willams. I am a nurse by training and work for a healthcare organization here in the Charlotte region. I'm also a former House representative.
Thank you, Diamond. Dr. Kendra Jason.
Hello, everyone. I am Kendra Jason. I'm an associate professor of sociology. I also have appointments in psychological science, in Africana studies, in gerontology, and in organizational science. I've been at UNC Charlotte since 2012, and my specializations in sociology are work and inequality.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jason. And Lynne Walter, no S. If you happen to see the flyer with the S in it, that's my bad. This is Lynne Walter, MSW, not LCSW as well.
Yeah, if you saw that other flyer, you didn't see it. Hey, everybody, my name is Lynne Walter. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella, and Espanol. I am the Advocacy and Organizing Manager at Pro-Choice North Carolina. I'm a loud and proud macro-level social worker. Shout out social workers. Sociologists, also cool. Nurses, also cool. But, I got to show love for my profession. And then, because I love music, I wanted to say that this week I've been also music is wonderful and it helps keep us sane. I've been listening to a lot of Roberta Flack for also sad reasons. So for folks who don't know, Roberta Flack, native of Black Mountain, North Carolina, amazing singer, pianist, songwriter, everything, passed away on Monday. So if y'all don't know her, I'm going to bet y'all know, but you don't realize you know her. But yeah, go look up some Roberta Flack and listen to a little bit of her this week.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for the panelists for all being here, and for you all, wherever you may be right now. We hope you are doing as best as possible in an ever-changing world that may not offer, what we want at times, right? So today, let's go ahead and jump into and start this great conversation, right? When we're looking at the health, safety, and well-being needs of women, that in itself can be language that's either very broad or not specific enough to really talk about, like, really what are we discussing, really what's being on the table here. So I'll start with you, Dr. Jason. Can you share with us, from your experience and expertise, what are some of the needs and challenges that you are aware of as it relates to the health, safety, and well-being of women?
Yeah, thank you, Matthew, for with that prompt, because to dig a little bit deeper, what you're also saying is that women are not a monolith, right? All women are not the same. We don't have the same needs. We don't have the same challenges. We have intersectional identities. I am a Black heterosexual woman, right? Used to be a single parent. Now, all of those things, right? And so I think it's really important, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So as we talk about women, right? And for me, women, people who also self-identify as women, we want to really think about holistically what all those challenges could be. And so what I thought about doing, because you have such a great panel, is really focusing in on employment, since that's my area, and thinking about it sociologically, of course, right? And so one thing is that we have these employment inequities. And then the second thing is that we have these gender expectations. And basically what that means is who we think women should be and what we think women should be doing, right? And so that shapes a lot of the limitations and the constraints and challenges that women have, right? So I made a quick list of just some things to capture. So number one, institutions do not invest in education, skill building, and professionalization of women, especially in higher ranking jobs. The second thing I have here to bring to the table, of course, is that women are not paid the same, even when they have equal tasks, right? And so women are often underemployed or working the same job, getting less pay, all right? Women are more likely to be single parents than men, right? So that economic burden that women have while they're working more for less matters, okay? Another thing, and this comes with those gender expectations, is that women are expected to sacrifice personal gain for the greater good. And that greater good could be for their family, for their community, for their jobs. Women are often expected to take a back seat or to do the work, but to give someone else the praise instead of getting that credentialing, that acknowledgement for themselves. And then finally, what I want to bring to the table is that the realities of being a woman in a male-centered and violent American society is greatly unknown and underappreciated. And so those were the things that came to mind when you gave us those questions in advance. So I'll pause there to see what the panelists have to add.
Yes, feel free, whoever, Diamond, Lynn, feel free to chime in with this conversation.
And Kendra, Dr. Jason, I'm glad that you started with employment, because employment also impacts how we're able to access healthcare.
Exactly.
It also impacts how we're able to gain even the minute improvements in health, right? So if I'm not employed, or gainfully employed, or I'm half employed with substandard pay, I'm not able to afford my medications. I'm not able to pay for a mental health counselor. I'm not able to do the things that someone who is more financially stable is able to do. So I'm glad you started there, because in health, things that I think about in ways that women are disadvantaged to a point, especially when we talk about reproductive health, we talk about maternal health. I think everyone probably on the call has been able to understand and see the impact of Black maternal health has on the lives of women, Black women in particular, but how, if we focus on Black maternal health, we can also help improve the health of other women who are having issues, because that is a big disparity. And then you also have to think about just chronic conditions. There's not a lot of research that happens for women of color, when it comes to blood pressure issues, when it comes to kidney health issues. How do we know a modality works when there's no research or research funding going into those areas? And then I touched briefly on mental health earlier, but mental health in and of itself is everyone's concern, right? And if we don't have the capability, possibility, or funding to be able to help provide for women to be able to access care, just basic health care, we're not going to do it for mental health care at all. And we have people who are suffering when they suffer during their maternity, they suffer after maternity. We need to be able to help support through the longitudinal care of people, period, and in particular women, because of course the backbone of every family relies on women, and we need to be able to help support them and give them the tools and the financial backing to get what needs to be done. And anything else, Kendra, anything I left off?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, you didn't leave anything else, but I was just thinking this gonna be a good conversation, because you brought up so one thing is I do research on people with chronic conditions as well. And then when you were talking about women being the backbone of the family, just for instance, just in the Black community alone, Black women, in like 84% of Black household women are the breadwinners, and up to like 54%, even if those couples are married. And so when we talk about, to your point, when we talk about employment and we talk about income, and then how that income matters for the social relationships in the family, and also what we have access to from our mental health challenges, to access to vacation, access to spending time with our families, access to education. All of those things are so tightly connected. It's really hard to disentangle health from income from other factors.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, y'all good. So just what you were saying about lack of research and lack of funding, that is something that I think about a lot, and think about in terms of challenges related to healthcare for women and for people who can be pregnant, and for gender expansive folks, and specifically for reproductive healthcare, and how the majority of people who have a uterus will develop fibroids by the time they're 50, and those rates are even higher for Black women and Black folks who can be pregnant. But where is the research? Where is the funding? I mean, that impacts something that could potentially impact well over half the population, but that there isn't funding poured into that. There isn't funding like prevention. And so definitely I see a lack of both research, but then also funding towards it. And then of course, I mean, to me, one of the biggest challenges that we're, have been dealing with off and on for decades and decades and decades and are back in a bad time of it right now is the utter attacks on bodily autonomy. And by that, I mean that, again, over half of the population was told, well, you know what? You actually don't have the right to make decisions about your own body. And if you want to be pregnant or if you don't want to be pregnant, even though you've thought about this, you've talked with your family members, you've talked with your healthcare providers, but you know what? 6 people in Washington, D.C. in the Supreme Court were like, yeah, no, sorry, y'all don't have the right to access abortion care. Send it back to the states, which we know is never good, because then you get piecework laws or piecemeal laws. You get entire deserts, entire sections of the country where there isn't access. And then you have burdens on states where there still is access because they're trying to help everyone then. So the attacks on bodily autonomy to me are one of the biggest challenges. And that I feel is also manifesting in ways such as women and trans folks just being erased from government databases, from government websites. And this ties into the LGBTQ plus webinar that y'all did, but Stonewall was a riot led by trans women of color. Marsha B. Johnson, say her name. And that's just like suddenly not there. So that to me that is another example of an attack on bodily autonomy, an attack on women, an attack on trans women, an attack on Black and Puerto Rican trans women. And then just the fact that, like Diamond alluded to, that, in North Carolina, our maternal and infant mortality rates are really bad. This is like, we don't want to be high on this. We don't want to have like really high numbers because that's not the direction you want to go. And then it's, 3 to 4 times higher for Black women and Black people who can be pregnant. And yet where's the funding? Where's the research? And I know that, in Diamond's previous life as a state legislator, there have been a lot of good bills introduced to specifically address, the horrible infant and maternal mortality rates we have here, and they just don't go anywhere, which is really, really frustrating. So yeah, to me, the attacks on bodily autonomy are what are really, because it just goes out in so many different directions from there. That to me is a huge, huge, huge challenge right now. And the fact that, just so our attendees are clear, anti-abortionists are not going to end with getting rid of access to abortion. Y'all, they're coming for your birth control. Doesn't matter why you use it. That's not important to them. They're coming for anything related to you having the right to control your own body. And so please don't think that would be the end. So yeah, to me, those are some of the big things that are especially challenging right now. And like, to be clear, have been challenging for many generations, but it feels like we're just in a super challenging phase at the moment.
Yes. Thank you there, Lynn. Thank you. So from where I'm hearing here, I'm trying to take a list of just kind of some things of information that we're talking about of where these needs come from, right? Or just kind of what we're looking at. And there's a term I want to introduce just to kind of hopefully encompass a lot of what we're hearing of the impact to women, and that's community violence, right? And so not in the community violence in the sense of communities where we see violent actions happening, but communities that exist in spaces where there's violence forced upon them based off of the policies and based off of what's pushed into communities. So when we're looking at gender affirming care or bodily autonomy, there's policies that are limiting that access to women, in which pushes women to be in situations that can be unsafe, harmful, otherwise deteriorate the health, safety, and well-being, and not give them the full ability to be able to live healthy and safety lives, right? We talked some about the safety concerns just in general of having resources, right? And we're seeing that, yes, right now where the ability for us to have access to resources is also based on how we're dealing with this conversation, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Because what conversation we seem to be having is often a very racially charged conversation, or a conversation involving sexual orientation, but it's far more encompassing than just those concepts, including women of all diverse types, right? So when we're looking at this theme and the ability for women to be healthy and to be safe, we're looking also at safety concerns, and that doesn't necessarily mean going to the hospital. It means your ability to just live your best life, right? Part of this, we want to talk also about some of the legislation that is limiting that at the state level, some at the local level, at the federal level. We are seeing boundaries put on what women are able to do in order to be held. So please feel free to continue this conversation on how do we deal with this, or what's going on in those levels that are able to, especially at the social levels. Like I don't want this conversation just to be one, because if you're someone whose healthcare is fine, that doesn't mean socially that you necessarily feel safe in the world that's around you as well. So talk more about some of the diverse ways in which women, or the many ways in which women are impacted in this communal sense, especially when it comes to their safety and in professional settings as well.
Yeah, again, I'm thinking about it from an employment standpoint first. I mean, it's connected to so many things. So, a lot of people don't realize how how much lower women get paid in comparison to men, right? And this is in the same job, in the same organization, doing the same task, right? Everyone is familiar with, women used to make 50% of what men made like in the 1950s. Well, guess what? It's still around the same thing now, up to like 60%. So there, we haven't made the great gains that many people think that we have made holistically. Again, all women. Now, if you break it down by race, gender, geographic area, and education, a lot of things, we can parse those things out. But when we're talking generally, women are still very much in a disadvantaged position economically than they should be for the credentialing and the experience that they have. Now, the reason that, to me, that this is a safety concern, Matthew, is because financial insecurity leads to financial distress, right? So I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina with Matthew, and what we know is that the financial distress and the housing market in Charlotte is like rivals Atlanta, in the direction of New York and San Francisco, right? And so a lot of people kind of don't think of us in that way, but the home insecurity part is a really big part of the makeup of this city. Also, when you have low pay, you have food insecurity issues for you and your family. As Diamond mentioned before, that's a lack of access to healthcare as well. And then Matthew, when you were thinking of, you were bringing out what's going on politically, of course, we can't ignore the fact that there are structural processes in place eradicating DEI, right, and policies. Now, one thing I think is so interesting, and Matthew knows this because Matthew and myself, we've done a lot of work in the university and in other elements where we try to train and workshop and teach people how to dismantle racism, sexism, how to make workplaces better and social relationships better. And one of the things that I've always said as an expert in this field is that you can't try to convince people through emotions and morals. You have to make it a policy. People only respond to policy. When it came to dismantling anti-Black racism or dismantling patriarchy, all those kind of things, we were only allowed to talk about it on an emotional and a moral standpoint. We weren't allowed to change policy. We weren't allowed to change practice. Well, lo and behold, guess what's coming down from the government? Policy. And people have to respond to policy. And that's the big difference. That's why it's so effective and it's so fast and it feels like whiplash, because it doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter if it aligns with your moral compass. It's the policy that's being put in place, right? And so that's one of the huge differences as far as the effectiveness of a lot of the executive orders that are coming down that are in relationship to eradicating DEI and why they're so effective and why people just kind of feel at a loss because your feelings don't matter. Right? So that's one thing, right? We know, and this historically, we've known that the population that has benefited the most from affirmative action has been white women and still white women, right? Now, that ain't all in itself bad. Great, right? Because what I appreciate about the advancement of white women is that white women often build alliances with other women at a faster and deeper rate than men, right? And so really trying to thinking about like politically, when those structures get put in place, you know, and these policies get put in place, we have to find ways to resist these policies. And the thing is, once it's a policy, you have to do it bureaucratically, right? It can't be informal. It can't be, you know, how you feel about it. You have to put some real structure in place. And so that's where we are now in the university. That's where we are in nonprofits and it's sort of like across the nation. So that's my sort of like 2 cents on how to think about how do we help mitigate these safety concerns coming from so many different levels of concern.
That's the most priceless 2 cents you will ever find in your life. The jewels and dimes that were dropped there, please pay attention. Please check in with that. Lynn, let me pull you into this conversation as well, right? Concerning your work with Pro-Choice North Carolina and going with what Dr. Jason mentioned here about what's your caring fit into the actions that you do, right? When we're looking at bodily autonomy, there are not uncommonly conversations about, I don't like that. I don't like that individual has this. I don't like that you can. I don't agree with the decision that you made. If we're putting the conversation of the liking and the caring and the what's it mean to me? All right. So speaking, this is the one place I can speak from as being a man, is we often hear conversations of, I have a daughter, I have a mother, I have a sister. My connection to the movement is based off my proximity to another woman, right? That's not unimportant, but would you say that that is how we should be leaning when it comes to how we engage? Should it be because I have someone who identifies as a woman connected to me to be able to push these conversations forward? Or there's something else that individuals who may not be as directly impacted by women's needs, something else that we should be looking into when we are trying to engage with or even learn more about women's needs and access to healthcare?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for a lot of people, that is a very easy place to start because it makes sense to them. And to quote the fabulous Renee Bracey Sherman, everyone loves someone who's had an abortion. And y'all, that is not an opinion, that is a fact. In the US, by the time people hit the age of 45, 1 in 4 people who can be pregnant will access abortion care. So all of us here know someone who has had an abortion, even if we don't know it, which may say a little bit more about us. And if people don't trust us or don't feel they can have honest conversations with us. So I would say that it's a very normal place to start with the very micro level. How does this impact me? And if it doesn't impact me, how does it impact people I know? What I would say though, and what would be really great, is for us to move people from that starting point to, you know what? Even if you don't know someone, this definitely impacts you, because what we see when we see attacks on groups of people, attacks on abortion access and reproductive health care, and attacks on queer folks and attacks on people of color are always the proverbial canaries in the coal mine, right? Always the things that are attacked first. So if you don't fit in one of those groups, maybe you're just not attacked right away. But eventually, the same people who don't believe that women and people who can be pregnant should have control over their own lives, or who don't believe that LGBTQ folks are full and beautiful human beings, and who don't value Black, Indigenous, and people of color, they will eventually come for you. So even if you're like, well, I don't know anybody, like your own, like people's own self-interest should really kind of kick in, I think. And I think also, I mean, we know, like in social work, so much of talking to people is understanding what's going to move them. There's this great concept called framing. So you're not changing what you say, maybe just how you say it. And the example I always give is how I talk with legislators is very, very different than how I talk with like the group of crust punk kids, downtown. Very different. I'm saying the same thing, I'm just framing it differently. So I think, you know, knowing people and knowing our communities and knowing what's going to reach folks in our communities to move them from that, I care about this because it impacts me, or I care about this because it impacts my friend, to the broader, oh, I care about this because it impacts my community, is something that can be a mitigating factor, I think, on that concern, if you will, around you know, maybe people don't think this, maybe people don't think they should be involved because they're not sure how it relates to them. But, you know, starting with the yes, maybe it impacts you or impacts someone you know, but moving people to understanding how it impacts the community. And not just, you know, I think something that we can also help people understand is how, when it comes to thinking about bodily autonomy and reproductive care and abortion care, that attacks on abortion have larger ripple effects when it comes to safety and when it comes to safety in healthcare. We have seen around the country, but you know, we're in North Carolina, so I'll just talk about North Carolina. Fantastic medical providers, highly trained, highly educated from other professions who are like, you know what? I'm about to finish up this like high level residency or this high level fellowship here in North Carolina, and I'm moving to another state. Because these arbitrary bans that y'all have literally nothing to do with health, nothing to do with science or medicine, would impact my ability to practice my field of medicine to the fullest extent. So if I am, you know, a gynecological oncologist, meaning, you know, dealing with cancers, I might not be able to do what is best for my patient, what I know is best, right? Because I have gone to med school and I have done my residency and I've done all these things because of these made up laws from people who aren't healthcare providers. So we're losing talented healthcare providers. We're losing talented, you know, not just doctors, nurses, but other health and human services people because they can't fulfill their own professional obligations and their own codes of ethics. So even if you're like, I have my own personal feelings about abortion, which is wonderful. Everyone, you know, have your own personal feelings. But like folks' personal feelings end when they mesh up with my personal feelings and my ability to access care. And even if, you know, having your own personal feelings, you should be concerned because what if you need to go get a particular kind of care and there aren't any of those providers in your community? What if in North Carolina, we have huge obstetric and gynecological deserts where there just aren't OBGYNs? So if people just want to go for like their annual exam or they decide they want to be pregnant, where are they going to go to access care? And how realistic is it that people are going to have time, money, time off of work to travel several counties over? So like these things have larger impacts, which really do affect women and, you know, trans folks' ability to have healthcare situations that are safe. And so, yeah, that was kind of like a lot of like, blah, blah, blah. But it's really ripple effects, y'all. For the social workers there, it is the whole social ecological model. It's the whole thing, y'all, micro to the macro. It ripples back and forth.
Thank you. So to kind of stay in the space of social awareness, right? We're looking at a lot of the intersectional concepts there, right? So we've heard about that a bit, just the multiple identities, because we all contain multitudes, and the multiple identities that we have, that we see socially and socioeconomically play a part in what we can access, right? So the individual who might be able to see that or to have that healthcare access based off of their socioeconomic status, the other individual who may need that same care doesn't have that access point because of something that's maybe outside their control or fits into the rest of what we talked about here. Because we're talking about the economic, the healthcare, they're interwoven into one another and how they can impact education to our economic and our job healthcare or your job healthcare. Those components fit together. Diamond, I'm going to put you here because there's a statement that I've heard from you recently, I've seen from you recently of, as a nurse, advocacy is second nature to you. Can you broaden that? Can you share more about what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I went to the North Carolina Nurses Association's Nurses Night at the legislature. And during that time, we as nurses congregate, bring in our representatives, whether they're a state senator or a House representative, to talk to them in a non-confrontational manner over food, to provide them with our insights and thoughts about nursing, things that we find valuable for us as nurses, being able to operate and do things at the top of our skills and licensure, things that may impact us and then impact the health of others, whether it's smoke in operating rooms and helping with ventilation. And then also, how are we going to train more nurses? We need people to be able to train nurses, because while I like to teach, I'm not the educator, right? Like that's not where my go-to is to sit and educate people every day. But I am great at directing people, connecting people, and doing those things. And people have to understand what their skill set is, right? So we need people to educate the next generation of nurses. And because, and everything goes back to money, just remember that. Everything always goes back to money. Because our nurse educators are not paid well, there are not a lot of people that want to go into nursing as an education, as an educator. So what happens then? What happens for those people who want to be a nurse, but I'm delayed because there's not enough educators, professors that want to teach me? I'm going to push back my education 2 or 3 years just to be able to get into a class, one class. How long is it going to take for me to get out of nursing school? So those kind of things are important for me to advocate for and be in the faces of legislators, either on my side of the party, opposite sides, because at the end of the day, it impacts us all. This is a huger impact when I say I need more nurses and there's nobody in the field to be able to do it. It's a huger impact when the nurses who are able to function at a higher level aren't able to do that because of legislation that is not there. It's a huger impact when I have 10 nurses in the OR who develop lung cancer because of not having the right ventilation. So we have to think about the bigger picture. When it comes back to legislation and things that we can impact, advocacy is being able to share stories, but also the data behind the stories. And oftentimes, what I found from my former friends in the legislative arena, the stories with the data help move things along. They are able to see it in a more tangible way, I believe, at times, versus coming to say, oh, my sister needs healthcare because of endometriosis. Okay, again, none of this is about feelings. It's about the data. How can you prove it? How are we improving the health of all of our communities by showing that data and showing how this idea or this topic can help improve the lives of our community? And we have to be able to do that in a way that's non-confrontational at this point in time, something that is going to be able to be received well and that other people can carry the water for. You need other people to carry your water, other advocacy groups, other organizations to be able to carry your water when they pitch their ideas, because all of these things are related. If I'm going to talk about reproductive health, I should also be able to talk about my nurses. I need more nurses because of X, Y, and Z. If I'm going to talk about economics, I'm talking about how women are being sex trafficked, and that usually people who get sex trafficked, when they get picked up, they're between the ages of 11 and 13 years old. You need to be able to talk about that in a way that is going to help support the greater good.
Fantastic. And since we're coming down to about the last 20 minutes or so, I want to take a moment to kind of, this question was not intended to be asked on the front end, but thinking through that we've talked about these needs, and oftentimes knowing, as you've all been answering, and we're in a space when we talk about needs, we often have the ability to see the recipient party as in a deficit, that we see individuals based off of their needs, and we kind of dehumanize individuals based off of, well, you're in need, therefore you're needy, therefore you are someone who we have to rescue. can we take some moments to talk about the great things that women bring to the world? Like, I mean, to say that, to be able to inherently focus and like put out there like why women are great. And that might seem like a very simplistic question, but I just don't think we do it enough to talk about the other side, right? Deficits coming from the systems are one thing, but the work that women bring in, we talked about Marsha P. Johns. We've let in front of us, there are 3 amazing women who are doing great work. Can you put out there either what you're doing, what's going on in your communities? What do people need to know if they want to be able to say, hey, you know what, this is the great stuff, the why we need to invest? Because there was another conversation topic earlier of investing in women as leaders, as professionals. Talk more about the great things that women are doing that people need to do more to invest in.
I'll start with nursing because we need more nurses. I'm always going to say it. Listen, when we talk about infection control, Florence Nightingale, she's the first person that invented, you need to go wash your hands. Like, go wash your hands. Why are you not washing your hands? And just look at that impact of washing your hands. We've reduced colds, we reduced flu for people because of a simple act, and that was not happening. For me, I think one of the biggest impacts that I'm having based on my knowledge and skill set that I've gained over the last 7 years is activating other people. It doesn't always have to be me in the front, right? There are other people behind me, other people around me that want to get involved in this work, but also don't know how to get involved in the work. And we have to be open enough and courageous enough at a higher level to, one, get out of the way. I think sometimes we're in the way. And when I say in the way, we create our own barriers, especially in our head and in what we think should be happening. Just because I think it should happen doesn't mean it should happen the way that I see it, right? We have to get out the way and let other people lead and provide them with the tools that are important, the network of people, the funding opportunities for people to be able to get it done. And in nursing, that's how we do it. We build our bench. You got to build your bench, teach the people behind you what's important so that they can take things and carry it forward.
Thank you, darn right. Kendra and Lynne.
Yeah, what I think of is women are so innovative, right? You know, I want to say women, you know, we make a way out of no way. Again, thinking about the context of work, often, you know, women pursue advancement at work. They see a position that they feel like they're primarily positioned for. They apply, they go through the hiring process, and at the end of the day, they're told, you know, we're going in a different direction, right? And so more often than not, they're denied when they have the credibility and experience to do the job that they pursued. You know, however, when there's a mess to clean up, or if a business needs to be stabilized because the previous incumbent just messed it up, or, you know, things kind of fell apart, these same women will get promoted into temporary positions in a fix it and clean up position, right? And so, you know, really just acknowledging that women are often asked to create programs, to meet organizational goals, to raise the profile of organizations, often without a budget or limited budget, without staff, and without peer support. They're doing it all alone, right? Or with very, 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 very little infrastructure or institutional support. However, the outcomes and the goals that they often visualize or envision for that position comes to be, right? And so, you know, women are not superheroes, right? And I say that like respectfully, not to say women aren't strong, but women aren't superheroes, you know, nor should they be expected to be superheroes, nor should we should expect them to be self-sacrificing, right? I think women are very brave because and women are very brave and they often step into and accept these types of positions. And it's not that they don't have fear, right? But bravery is doing something in spite of fear, right? And I think that a lot of women, one benefit that benefit is a funny word, but one way that we operate, right, is that we don't, I think, consider the loss. We don't allow the fear and the fear of loss to dictate how we move, because we know as women, and especially as women of color, those things are apt to be taken from us anyway under some other circumstance, right? And so while we have the positioning, while we have the support, while we have the agency, we step into these roles, we make magic happen. We meet those goals and we do the best that we can, and it often meets what is expected, or even beyond what is expected, even if we don't have the infrastructure and the support as many of our peers and counterparts do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's so many, again, like Dr. Jason said, not superheroes, not superheroines, because we're not here for that figurehead stuff. Like, it's all of
Yeah.
us in this together, y'all. And with that being said, there are so many incredible and amazing women and gender expansive folks just doing amazing and incredible things. I'm just thinking about the number of solid community organizations who are out there doing really, really important work, who are working with their community. So not, telling people what to do, but working with them. And how many of those are led by women, or led by trans folks, including, the biggest union in North Carolina, the North Carolina Association of Educators, led by Madam President, my president, Tamika Walker Kelly, doing incredible things, right? So I think that to me, that is a very positive thing, is that even though there are so many, societal and systemic structures and inequities stacked against women and women of color and trans folks of color, like, we're all still out here doing important stuff and doing it together and doing it in, hand in hand with our communities. And so to me, that's a really positive thing, is that even when all these awful things are trying to, crush people's spirit, so many folks are just like, nope, we save us, we save each other, and we're going to do this together, no matter what comes at us. So to me, that is a very, very positive thing.
Amazing, amazing. The last few minutes we have here, I want to at least cover one base, because you all offered, and in many different ways, some of the solutions to some of the issues that you've outlined, right? Investing in women intentionally, right? That seems to be the big connecting factor, is intentionally, not as a byproduct of some other type of initiative, as it's going to go and trickle down this way because everyone has access to, therefore now women will inherently, but intentionally, because we do see women intentionally stepping up, women intentionally engaging, right? There's that space where women, I don't want to offer this maternalistic aspect of intentionally, intuitively stepping up because they know there's a need, but it happens, right? And as it happens, there has to be the acknowledgement that women are doing these great things. So when we're looking at solutions and community organizations, what are some ways, if you're an individual coming into this conversation, either unknown or wanting to do more, what are some tips or information you all can offer to those that want to be more supportive of women's needs, women's efforts, and overall to support the health, safety, and well-being of women across the board in the most diverse sense possible?
Well, so 3 things that popped into my brain. One, think about, like, what is an issue you care about that, either you care about because you are a woman, or because you are, someone who could be pregnant, or you're trans, whatever. And so what's an issue you care about? And then who in your community is doing that work? What organization, what community group, and how can you plug in with them? Because there is rarely the need to invent a new thing. And I'm talking to like any of my fellow white ladies out there, y'all, we need to stop inventing new shit whenever something bad happens. I don't, pardon my French. Like, there are good, solid community organizations who've been doing what you care about for decades. So learn about your community, plug in with those folks. Something else that popped into my head is just, we can each take time to fight against this, tidal wave of misinformation and disinformation. And I think that that's something that is really, really dangerous to a lot of people's safety. We've seen, some awful things happen because somebody, well, I read this thing on the internet, it must be true. So, we're all here, we're somehow affiliated with a university, or we care about things happening at a university. So we know where to get legitimate facts and legitimate, news sources. So we can do that as well. I think that's a very easy thing to do, and speaking out about it. And then the third thing, which of course now has left my brain, but if it comes back to me, I will share it later.
I think, thank you, Lynn. I think we need to, of course, raise the minimum wage. I think we need to offer equal pay for equal work. I know you already said investment. I was thinking about investment from a business aspect, but I think like in the society sense, we should invest more in women and shift our expectations that women have a place. Even as a woman that you have a place, right? I also think when it comes to psychological safety, that we should believe women, right? It's almost become cliche at this point, but we really should believe women. When women say that they are scared, that they are harmed, that they are exploited, or they are silenced, and often women don't have they don't have this terminology, right? Right? As academics, we can easily say that's exploitation, that's harm. But unfortunately, for too many women, that's their everyday existence. To be in trauma, to be in harm, to be in a situation of exploitation is the norm for so many women. And so really to identify when we have women in these situations, and to build social supports around those women. I also think that community organizations have a really key role in supporting women, because community organizations are often connected to funding resources and even act as quote unquote brokers between women and their families and resources. Community organizations also provide social supports for women, in the sense that, if I'm a home insecure Black mom and I get connected with an organization that is, that has the mission to uplift and employ and find stable housing, guess who else is going to be there? Other home insecure mothers, right? And so having a place to build that community and a place that's psychologically and physically safe is really important as well.
So I'm glad you said psychological safety. We've been learning a lot about psychological safety, and I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, actually, about sexual harassment that happened to her, and how the woman in charge, there was no action taken.
Mm-hmm.
And her angst and feelings about the situation escalated for her.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in therapy getting additional help, but also feels some type of way about the woman who could have acted and created the atmosphere where things will not be tolerated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that she had to experience that, because this is someone, you think this used to happen years ago in the 80s, 90s, whatever. This happened in 2024, right? And it's unfortunate. And as you said, we need to believe women, but we also, in addition to believing women, if you are in the position to do
Mm-hmm.
something, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let it slide. because just because you learned about it today doesn't mean it hasn't been happening for years, and that it won't continue to happen, because you've given space and opportunity to where that person, whoever that is, feels emboldened and they feel like there will be no consequences. So do something. If you see something, do something about it. Encourage the person to come forward. There are mechanisms in place within organizations and even in settings where you can report things anonymously, even if you don't feel safe to do it. But at the forefront of it all, you need to feel psychologically safe. You need to feel safe within yourself and within your autonomy of self to be able to do something about it. And we have the opportunity as women and as allies to do something about it, regardless of how you feel about it. We should do something. So that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you, everyone, panelists for your time here. We're gonna get some questions. Again, appreciate your solutions and your answers we have here too. We have one in the chat that's been there for shortly. That's for you, a diamond there. The question is, I know that nursing is a field where these healthcare professionals are unpaid compared to other health professionals in the work environment. What are your opinions about nursing advocacy in regard, and how and if health inequities and health disparities affect this?
So if I'm just trying to gather more information about the question, because when you talk about health disparities and health concerns for people, most people who are in lower paid healthcare positions are people of color. So when Dr. Jason talked about increasing the minimum wage and having legislation that goes to that, we need to do it. The healthcare organization that I work with and work for is doing what needs to be done to help increase the minimum wage. But we're only one organization. That doesn't mean another healthcare organization is following our lead. So you have to have the legislation to be able to do it for all, and the backing to be able to do it. And it does impact health disparities, because again, the most underpaid people are typically people of color. And if I don't have the money to be able to go to the doctor, or I can't take that time off of work to go to the doctor because I'm scared I won't have enough money to pay my rent, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I won't be able to pay for my hypertension medication. I won't be able to go to the renal doctor because my primary care doctor told me I had renal issues and I know I have $150 copay. Like, those are real life situations that we have to really pay attention to and encourage our employers of choice to do better by us all.
Thank you for that answer there, Diamond. We also have, Kimberly had a question here. I'm going to give you the mic to talk here if you want to ask your question. That's for you, Ms. Kimberly Sanders. They're still going to ask you to hand down. Oh, there we go. Can you hear us, Kimberly? Might be some technical issues there.
Kimberly's trying to fake us all out.
Yeah.
Keep us on our toes.
Any other questions for anyone else? Let's see. Mic coming on and off. Feel free to also type your question in the chat in the moments that we have left as well if the audio is not working as we want to. We'll see when that comes through. There's a few more comments made in the chat as well. Again, the statement of how we're caring about individuals, having access, it's my sister, mother, whomever else, but not showing that same, using that as a diversion for individuals to combat the conversation of abortion, but that same support and care doesn't show up in conversations with mental health access, healthcare access, substance use, and harm reduction, right? So making sure, again, that same energy, if you have the feeling and belief that the women around you matter, how often and where do they matter besides those moments where it's something that you specifically want to stand for as well?
And I think that statement is talking about when anti-abortionists use that, well, my daughter, sister,
Yes.
mother, to
Yes.
to be paternalistic. and prevent them from accessing care. But then that same, whoever the anonymous attendee who put support and care in quotes, you're
Yes.
spot on with that. That same care doesn't happen, or that same support isn't shown when people need to access any kind of healthcare. That paternalistic, well, I know what's best for you, even though it's not my body, but then I'm not going to care about your other healthcare needs either.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so we are at the hour of time. Kimberly popped in. Just want to say thank you for this. And again, we appreciate all the attendees, the panelists, folks for showing up. This will also be available in the coming week or so to be able to access afterwards. So feel free to share this webinar offering in your networks. We'll have another offering tomorrow for international communities, which will end our series before UNC Charlotte goes to spring break, and we'll be able to do more of this after spring break and continue the conversations. I'm going to leave this with a theme, because we're looking at organizations from the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, which was lifting as we climb. That was I feel to be a great theme, as our panelists spoke on, of supporting others that are coming up in their steps, around them, wherever they're coming from, making sure that we can support those who have needs and in their needs as we can. So thanks all for attending. We appreciate you, and hopefully we will see you soon. Y'all take care. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.